Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here. Week 11 of the 25-26 NBA season is in the books and we are already into the early part of January. For those that are keeping up at home, my MVP race to the end of December 2025 has been uploaded and there will be obviously some more movers and shakers in that list as the season goes on, particularly the month of January, with some key injuries to some key players and, you know, whether they're missing games or falling out of contention. That's essentially what is going to really shape this list. There have been some nice contributors, some guys that have really shot up the list because of performances that many weren't expecting. There's some other guys that have dipped because, well, they just haven't been at standard, but I'll let you go and check that out. Very similar here across the league when you look at each team and how they have performed through week 11. Some teams have started to make a bit more of a run, others have started to slide, and others have taken a huge dip. So we will get into it and have a look at how everything stands after 11 weeks of the 25-26 NBA season. Starting off with Atlanta, and they went 2-2 on the week. They're now 17-21, 10th in the conference. Jalen Johnson, their leader this season, continues to have more production as they go along. 23.8 points, 10.3 rebounds, 8.3 assists, 1.3 steals and 0.5 blocks on 4.3 turnovers. Shot 51.4 from the field, 36.4 from deep and 65% from the free throw line. And the big conversation that is now being thrown around in Atlanta is exactly what's going to happen with Trae Young. Everyone was wondering what they were going to do without him, and now they're wondering what they're going to do with him. So it looks like the Trae Young era of Atlanta is over, and they are buying heavily into Jalen Johnson. Now the question is, who do they trade him for? There are conversations being had around Anthony Davis, and I don't like that for either side, either for Jalen Johnson or certainly for Cooper Flagg. We'll see what happens from there, but yes, so far at the moment for Atlanta, there are just some questions about who is the next key piece to join this team, and what does that mean for this team moving forward. To the Boston Celtics, and they are a team that has made a huge run right now, to the point where they are the second best team in the East, and they are making a really hard chase towards the top seed of the East. A 4-0 weekly record, second in the conference, and Jaylen Brown making his case for All-NBA first-team selection here in 2025-26. On the 4 games this week, 29 points, 6.8 rebounds, 5.8 assists, 0.5 steals on 3 turnovers. Shot 46.8% from the field, 32.1% from deep and 76% from the free throw line. Probably the only criticism I have of the Celtics isn't really for the Celtics, it's of the general observational public who haven't been paying attention to exactly what Boston have done for the last 10 years as a franchise, of finding guys who can plug and play within their system, guys who step up and just consistently being a competitive monster for the better half of a decade. Teams are just starting to realise that now, and they're starting to realise it more because they're not focusing on whether Jason Tatum does or doesn't have any aura or have any impact on the game. Boston are flying, they're doing really well, and Jaylen Brown himself has stepped up enormously and showing why he's a finals MVP, and for me, why he's going to be making a genuine case for the All-NBA first team this year. The Brooklyn Nets, they still remain out of contention. A 1-2 weekly record, 11-22 overall, 13th in the conference, and Zion Williams with a really nice rounded week, albeit not being a great first option, but certainly efficient and getting it done on both ends of the floor. 13.7 points, 2 rebounds, 0.7 assists, 3 steals and a block on 0.7 turnovers. Shot 51.7 from the field, 53.8 from deep and 90.9 from the free throw line. There are actually conversations around whether Michael Porter Jr. is going to be open to a trade mid-season, which will be really positive for him. He's been playing really, really well, and I think he should be regarded within that all-star category this year, but it's certainly not good for Brooklyn if they're not going to get much for it in return. The Charlotte Hornets, they themselves still remain 10 games below 500, 13-23 overall, and 2-2 weekly record though, including the scalp of the Oklahoma City Thunder, handing them their 7th loss of the season. 12th in the conference for the Hornets, and Brandon Miller really stepping up, having a nice week, really taking along well with someone like a Con Knipple as well. 25.5 points, 5.3 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 1 steal and 0.8 blocks on 2.8 turnovers. Shot 45.6% from the field, 46.2 from deep, 85.7 from the free throw line. Charlotte have a couple of nice young guys here. They're now going to find a way to turn that into some gold. The Chicago Bulls, they remain sitting in ninth. Had a chance to square things up at 500 on the season, but much like the Bulls of the last 3 to 4 years, they haven't been able to put 2 consistent weeks of basketball together, and it has shown. 2-2 weekly record, 17 and 19 overall, as I mentioned, sitting ninth in the East. Nikola Vucevic continues to be the most consistent and efficient player this year for my liking, and he did that again this week. 19.3 points, 10 rebounds, 6.3 assists, 0.3 steals, 0.3 blocks, and 1.3 turnovers. 58.5 from the field, 52.9 from deep, and 75% from the free throw line. I can't criticise that, but I think it needs to draw a broader picture for the Bulls in what they have at their disposal versus what they're delivering consistently. That's not saying that Vucevic shouldn't be in these conversations. The guy's been a double-double for the better part of a decade, but it is well and truly beyond the point of Nikola Vucevic having to be your lead guy. You've signed big money to Josh Giddey. You're expecting big money to Kobe White. They're the guys that should be lifting and delivering, particularly a Giddey, and you're just not quite seeing that at the moment. So it'll be interesting. Of course, injury concerns, and you're trying to run through different lots of people. I can't fault that, particularly with guys like, White and Giddey, who have had their injury concerns. But for the Bulls, it really is indicative of their position in the league right now and their position on this season, that despite all the high hopes, they're still going back to someone like a Vucevic to be their constant and to be their efficient. It's a big question mark for the Bulls. The Cleveland Cavaliers, a 2-1 weekly record. They are 20 and 17 overall, so 3 games above 500. They are straddling the 8th position in the conference right now, and it's a real ebb and flow as to what can happen there. They've obviously got some games on the Bulls, which is handy, and if they can start to win a few more, considering the topsy-turvy nature of the East, maybe they can move themselves back into that top 6 and avoid the play-in tournament. Donovan Mitchell, their best player on the week, and has been consistently one of the best players in the league this year, let alone for his team. No surprise here. 32.3 points, 7.3 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, 0.3 blocks on 3.3 turnovers. Shot 54% from the field, 41.4 from deep, and 73.9 from the free throw line. This is a guy here who I think has been criminally underrated through most of this season. To the end of December, I had him in my top 5 for the MVP. Now, people are going to criticise that, but if Donovan Mitchell was doing all of this on a bigger franchise, there would be no question about it. And again, I want to look at this in a completely, as much parity as possible, and to simply discard it because he's playing in Cleveland, considering they won 64 games last year and no one else is performing, I think you've got to give the guys flowers. Playing really, really well. The Cavs, they need to flip it around. Hopefully health will help them in the long run. Health is certainly helping this team in the long run. That is the Detroit Pistons. They have bounced back nicely. A couple of rough weeks, probably a rough month by comparison, but they have found their feet once again. A 3-1 weekly record, 27 and 9 overall, and to me, the best point guard in the NBA this year. Cade Cunningham leading the way. 28.5 points, 5.5 rebounds, 10.5 assists, 1.8 steals and 1.3 blocks, 4.5 turnovers. He does have a high usage rate, but those turnovers can prove costly. Of course, locking in defensively this week has certainly helped. 48.6 from the field, 42.1 from deep, 94.4 from the free throw line. The concern that the Pistons have now is that they not only have the Knicks trying to chase them hard, even though they've had a bad week, the Knicks, and we'll get to them, but you've also got the Celtics that are chasing hard after having a really good week. For Detroit, they need to keep up that pace. They need to try and still maintain some space at the top of the leaderboard. They don't want to burn themselves out as a young team. They made the playoffs last year. Expectation would be a first, second round again. I mean, realistically, they're a team that can win the conference. But now that you've got some experienced sides putting some pressure on you, it's how you stay the course and how you maintain that composure through what is essentially the busy part of the NBA season. Speaking of busy part of the season, the Indiana Pacers, who have used, I would hazard a guess at almost 25 players this year. I'd have to go and double check that, but they have one of the longest rosters I've ever seen in recent league history, and it's understandable through injuries, through concerns, through rotations, and they are 0-3 on the week. They're also 6-30 for the season, 15th in the conference. Pascal Siakam continues to be a bright light in a very dark room. And again, he'd be an all-star on any other team with these kinds of performances. 27.7 points, 6.7 rebounds, 3.3 assists in his 3 games played. To go 1.3 steals, 0.3 blocks and 1.3 turnovers. 55.9 from the field, 35.7 from deep, and 70.6 from the free throw line. The Miami Heat. have managed to have a couple of good weeks here. They've panned out a nice winning formula in this one as well. A 2-1 weekly record, 20-16 overall. So a 4-game clearance, sitting a game clear of the Cavaliers. And of course, with the Bulls not at 500, have a bit of breathing space there, occupying the top 2 spots of the playing tournament in the East. As I said, thought they might be a bottom 5 team, but they've just managed to find that mix to put them in contention. Norman Powell, in his 3 games this week, 30.3 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.3 steals and 1.7 turnovers. Epically efficient scoring, 56.9 from the field, 56.3 from deep, and 88.2 from the free throw line. Powell has been a borderline all-star for a lot of this year, and I think he's really starting to try and crack a case on that now. Things are going to tighten up as the season goes through. Again, I will hold my all-star selections right through until the all-star break. That's just how I deal with it. Norman Powell at the moment certainly has been that number 1 option there in Miami for a team that doesn't really have a number 1 situated offense. And you've got to remember, they're still delivering this with Tyler Hero only having played a handful of games this year. So, yeah, some really positives there for the Heat. Makes you wonder exactly what they're going to be doing in the off-season. Speaking of teams that might need to do something in the off-season, I mean, there's been whispers of Miami and Milwaukee for a number of years now. I don't know whether it would go ahead, but I think it'd be very intriguing considering the state of play for Giannis Antetokounmpo. But for the Bucks this week, 2-1 weekly record, now 4 games off 500. So they are in 11th. They're not quite the team that's going to try and snatch it into the playing tournament yet, but they're going to have to do something if they maintain Giannis. Otherwise, we're going to see his numbers go through the roof and see him walk out the door. A nice week for him efficiency-wise, 33 points, 33.3 points in fact, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, 0.3 steals on 4 turnovers. Probably one of the more lackluster weeks for Giannis as far as his distribution and defense are concerned. 64.3 from the field is nothing we haven't seen, and 80% from the free throw line. As I mentioned, this guy would be having a bit more of a say in the MVP conversation had he played more games. There's no doubt about it. He's going to be in contention for all NBA teams, and I do differentiate between all NBA and MVP. And he's had a good season when he has been on the floor, but he also has the issue of needing to play 65 games. The Bucks do look like a better team when he's in there. There's no doubt about it because they're built around him, and a lot of guys like Ryan Rollins and Kevin Porter Jr. can really benefit from it. But it's a matter of how long he's going to be left on this floor as to how this Milwaukee team even looks, after the All-Star break itself. The New York Knicks have fallen to the 3rd seed after a 0-4 weekly record. A bit of a slump there for the Knicks, but that's a learning curve for them coming into the real busy part of this season. 23-13 overall, so still 10 games above. They're just sitting, as I said, slightly behind Boston right now, and Jalen Brunson still putting his best foot forward, still one of the elite players in this league and has been one of the elite players, particularly this season. In his 4 games this week, 27.3 points, 3.3 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 0.8 steals on 3.3 turnovers, 44.9 from the field, 33.3 from deep, and 82.6 from the free throw line. Big thing that helps New York right now is their experience. They've been battling together as a unit for a number of years now. They've added key pieces. They've changed their coaching style. At some point there's going to be a bit of an unraveling of the thread. It happens with all teams. We're seeing it particularly from the conference leader right now in the West. But you have to rely on the experience that they've had and the journey they've been on. Can they possibly recover from this? New York's made playoff runs. They've made conference finals in the last couple of years. This is a team that can handle this. The question they have now is that they also have an experienced Boston team that's still lifting and a young Detroit team that's running out in front. That's what they have to contend with right now for them to still remain competitive and still be a force and factor in the East. The Orlando Magic, they have been bouncing around the last couple of weeks, just maintaining 500, having a win here or there, and they managed to get a winning record this week, 20-16 overall, 22-1 on the week, as I mentioned, and 6th in the conference. Again, they haven't had Franz Wagner for an extended period, and they haven't had Banchero, Wagner, and Desmond Bain for an extended period, let alone factoring in what Anthony Black has been bringing offensively to the team. Banchero, the really nice week. I saw him floating around in the all-disappointment team, and I think it's a little bit of a fair assessment considering where he's been jumping to, but Banchero has shown exactly what he can do in this league. 29.3 points, 9.3 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.3 steals and 1.3 blocks on 3 turnovers. Nice shooting splits from the field at 54.8 overall and 45.5 particularly from deep. 65.2 from the free throw line. We'll need to see that lift. But Orlando are still just that funny mix right now because you haven't seen them at full flight and you haven't seen their full rotation go through. again, they're maintaining 500. They're staying above 500. They're staying in the top 6. If you can get some form back in with how topsy-turvy it can be, they can still potentially make a run to the top 4. Then you're having a different conversation. We'll see exactly how it pans out, but Orlando, a really nice week. Speaking of really nice weeks, the Philadelphia 76ers, a 3-1 record on the week, 19-15 overall, 5th in the conference, and Tyrese Maxey continuing to stake his claim as one of the many contenders to the All-NBA first team this year, in my opinion at least. Big week over 4 games, 33 points, 6.5 rebounds, 8 assists, 2.3 steals, and 1.5 blocks on 2 turnovers. Epic efficiency on the regular stat line, and you look at the shooting percentages from the floor, 57.3 from the field, 51.4 from deep, 70.6 from the free throw line. I will be critical there. Again, I want to see a perimeter player shooting 8 out of 10 from the line in the NBA. You get paid that much money, you're meant to be that good at the game. You should be hitting free shots. Really simple stuff. But again, Maxey's had an absolute blinder of a year, and you've only got to see when he puts on a performance like he did this week and he continues to get support from someone like a VJ Edgecombe, then you're going to start seeing the results flow through. Embiid, showing some fleeting moments, which is handy. Paul George, still floating around that 3rd, 4th option, but the consistency of this team is going to come down to the ultimate consistency and success of a Tyrese Maxey. And when you put a week together like that, there's no wonder the team goes 3-1. The Toronto Raptors, a 2-1 week for them, 22-15, and they are still sitting nicely in 4th spot in the conference. As you can see, they've played 3 more games than Philadelphia and having won all 3, so certainly a bit of pressure there, but it is a nice little gap for them. A couple of more wins, maybe an undefeated week next week, depending on how results go. They're then trying to climb back into that top 3 position in the East, so they're the other real contender amongst, heading realistically for that top 4 in the Eastern Conference. Brandon Ingram, a really nice week, a guy who's going to be an all-star for me this year. In his 3 games played this week, 26 points, 8.7 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 1 steal, and 1.3 blocks on 2.3 turnovers. And people might ask about if, there's not much passing going on there, but if a guy's going to put together 60% from the floor, 64.3% from deep, and 90% from the free throw line, why would you give the ball up to someone who's not going to hit it and score it as much as you do? That's a genuine question. Again, Scotty Barnes having a really nice year as well, but Brandon Ingram being a huge support there. And you factor in everything that Toronto were potentially last year with injuries compared to what they're doing now. Great acquisition towards the end of last year and really starting to utilise him now. Finally, in the East, we go over to the Wizards, who had a winning week, and Alex Sarr has had back-to-back consistent weeks on both ends of the floor. But the Wizards are still 9-25 and sit 14th. For Sarr himself, 15.3 points, 6.3 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 0.3 steals, and 2.7 blocks on 1.7 turnovers. 45% from the field, 50% from deep, 87.5 from the free throw line. Bit of a unicorn player here if he can really spread his wings. I'm pretty sure he'll stay in Washington after his contract's up, but if not, I can easily see a team snaffling him up because the way he can play on both ends of the floor at 7 foot and move up and down the floor, he is a dangerous prospect. Over in the Western Conference, the Dallas Mavericks, only the 2 games this week and split them 1-1. They still sit 10 games off the pace in 12th Conference. Anthony Davis, their best player, 19.5 points, 10 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 0.5 steals, and 2.5 blocks on 4 turnovers. 53.6 from the field and 81.8 from the free throw line. Didn't make a shot from outside, and as I say, if you're going to take them, you've got to make them. And the conversation has switched around Dallas right now. It's going to be a matter of whether Anthony Davis is there or not, and whether they potentially move him for Trae Young. I don't know. I'm a little concerned for that trade. I'm pretty sure that would kill a lot of the Cooper Flag momentum, and I think that wouldn't be a good thing for someone like Kyrie Irving looking to return later this year. We'll see whether Dallas are stupid enough to do it. I very much doubt that they are, but they are the same franchise that traded Luka Doncic. Over to Denver, who split the week 2-2 following the absence of Nikola Jokic, who's expected to miss most of January and have his MVP contention status really up in jeopardy. But 2-2 week, 24-12 overall, still 4th in the conference and plenty clear. Peyton Watson stepping up across those 4 games and a really nice production from him. 23 points, 5.8 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 1 steal, and 0.8 blocks on 2.5 turnovers. 48.5 from the field, 27.3 from deep, and 76.9 from the free throw line. The big issue for Denver right now, honestly, is their injuries. At 1.4 out of 5 starters out with an injury. Their backup center in Jonas Valanciunas also out with an injury. So there is not a great deal of depth to this Denver team compared to when they started the season. Now, have they got injuries at the right time? Can they maintain 500 and stay in touch? I don't know. If Peyton Watson's going to step up and play like this, there's a chance, but it is going to come down to the medical report as to how successful Denver's going to be this month. The Golden State Warriors, 19 and 18 overall. They've been sitting just at or above or just slightly below 500 for most of this season. A 2-2 weekly record, 8th in the conference. And we saw everything from Draymond ejections to Steve Kerr blow-ups to Jimmy Butler airballs and a couple of decent Steph Curry games here or there. Consistently for the 4 games, Brandon Podziemski, 4 games played, averaged 10.8 points, 4.3 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 0.8 steals and 0.3 blocks on half a turnover. 41.2 from the field, 50% from deep, and 63.6 from the free throw line. I think, again, this continues to be the underlying factor for Golden State. When your star players are out there and performing well, the team looks good, but it really does hide the lack of depth you do have at some positions. And don't get me wrong, someone like Podziemski can play, but you can't be having him play 4 games and having struggling to score 10 points a game. That's the issue that they had previously with young Steph when it came to someone like a Draymond Green and a Harrison Barnes. They cannot afford to have that now with an older Steph and guys with, in my opinion, less talent and ability. The Houston Rockets, they are still trying to maintain their composure, so to speak, in the West. 2-1 weekly record, 22 and 11 overall, now 5th in the West, and Kevin Durant is starting to climb his way up the MVP standings. I don't think he's ever going to be competing for it, but he's certainly starting to make a case for himself as an all-NBA player in season 25-26. He's had a really nice run with the Rockets, 27.3 points, 6.7 rebounds, 7.3 assists on 1.3 blocks to go with 3 turnovers. 50% from the field for KD, 23.1 from deep, 93.3 from the free throw line. Big shot at the day of recording for Kevin Durant to win the game against Phoenix. I know that one would have felt pretty good for him, but there's also a caveat to that in the sense that, well, you know, maybe Durant needed to be a bit healthier. Maybe Durant needed to pitch in a little bit more. Maybe he needed to play a little bit more team ball. I do have a sense that they've given him the keys to the car to drive as a number 1 option here in Houston, and that's why he's been a lot happier. I don't necessarily think that was the factor in Phoenix, and I think that's where a lot of that chip on the shoulder came from with that particular game winner. The Clippers have managed to rally, at one point looking like the worst team in the conference. They are still 9 games below 500, but Kawhi Leonard has put in back-to-back performances that have, well, made him look like the old Kawhi Leonard. 3-1 weekly record, 11th in the conference for the Clippers, and there have been some conversations around Kawhi that have circulated. 31 points, 6.8 rebounds, 4 assists, 2.3 steals, and 1.5 blocks on 2.5 turnovers, 47.8 from the field, 31.7 from deep, and 89.3 from the free throw line. The conversations that are now being had around Kawhi Leonard are potential trades to Boston. Now, I'm not saying that that is the be-all, end-all for Kawhi. I'm certainly not saying that that's a perfect fit for Boston. But if Kawhi Leonard's going to get traded there, there's the potential that you can get him on a smaller contract at some stage. There's the potential that Jason Tatum doesn't need to return. And if Jason Tatum does return, you have potentially put Kawhi Leonard in as a reliable third option in a Boston team that manages to just find guys to plug and play. Now, Kawhi in that space can play 50 games. It's an interesting concept. I'd like to know what they have to give up in return. The Lakers with a 2-1 week, 22 and 11 overall for them, 3rd in the conference, and they found a little bit more of their mojo this week, and a lot of it does come off the back of someone like Luka Doncic. Yep, he did have some high turnover rates there, but he was a lot more efficient from the floor. And can you really fault him? 33.3 points, 6.7 rebounds, 9 assists, 0.7 steals, and 0.3 blocks. 45% from the field, as I said, improving over the last couple of weeks. 28.6 from deep and 82.6 from the free throw line. This is a really good opportunity for the Lakers to really consolidate themselves back in that top 3, particularly with Nikola Jokic being out of Denver's lineup, and particularly with the injuries that are being suffered there by Denver. Now, it is going to be a matter of consistency and getting others back involved in the offense. Obviously, LeBron James is still there, but you need to be able to get LaRavia back into the lineup and really working. You also have to probably reactivate someone like a DeAndre Ayton, who certainly had some limited touches by comparison to the start of the year. Now, obviously, someone had to be a victim of possession when it comes down to LeBron returning to the team, but I just don't think DeAndre Ayton was the guy to do that to, because when a big guy's playing with confidence, you'll find most teams are a lot better off for it. The Memphis Grizzlies, whilst we're looking 2 games off 500 and really sitting there trying to crack 500 and really put pressure on Golden State, a really rough week for them. A 0-3 record, now 5 back from 500, putting them, a little further behind the 8 ball than they expected. Still in the play-in tournament at 10th in the conference, but they still have a bit of work to do. Cedric Coward, a really nice week for him. A young star in the making. 16.3 points, 10.3 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 0.7 steals on 0.3 blocks to go with 2 turnovers. 51.4 from the field, 40% from deep, and 100% from the free throw line. Again, for Memphis, this is just where it becomes a real spanner in the works. And because they are so tight and so close still within the Western Conference, there's no real reason for them to stop being competitive, but they do need to build something up. They do need a couple of consistent weeks if they're going to get anything out of this season. If they slip right down to 9-10 games below 500, watch them blow it up and just rest the rest of the year, but they're still within reach of 500 and still within reach of that 8th seed, so it'll be interesting to see what their moves are for the month of January. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they continue to sit 10 games above 500. They continue to be competitive and disruptive and continue just to put themselves in a really nice position to make a hard run at the end of the season and really challenge some of these upper echelon sides in the Western Conference. A 2-1 weekly record, 23-13 overall, 6th in the conference, and Anthony Edwards with a really nice week. Another guy who's starting to make some noise towards that MVP conversation, particularly with everything that's going on around the league and what's to come in the month of January. For Edwards, 32.7 points, 4.7 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 2 steals, and 0.7 blocks on 2.2 turnovers, 58.6 from the field, 42.3 from deep, and 73.1 from the free throw line. There hasn't been much consistency by comparison to the start of the year out of his other key players over the last couple of weeks, but he has been delivering results. And for Minnesota, again, it's just a matter of staying in touch. It's a matter of timing your run. And that's a team that has made the conference finals the last 2 years. They can potentially do it for a 3rd year in a row, but they're going to have to time that run. And again, it's about consistency. I don't know whether their defense is going to hold up, but there's no reason why they can't continue to make some moves and just try and time that run. New Orleans remain the worst team in the conference, didn't win a game this week, and they're 8-29 overall. Zion was their best player, 26 points, 6.7 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 0.7 steals, 0.7 blocks on 1 turnover. Shot 60% from the field and 70.6 from the free throw line. There's really not much more to say. The only fight that we've seen from them this year was in Jose Alvarado. The Oklahoma City Thunder continue to be the number 1 seed in the West, the number 1 seed in the league, and to me, they still have a case of being clear-cut favourites, but I wouldn't suggest the gap is as far as it was a few weeks ago. 6-6 over the last 12 games, and there's just a matter of them, I think, trying to tighten the screws and not wanting to get too far out in front, because I think that was a genuine concern for them there a few weeks ago. They were 24-1, to give you an idea of what exactly they've done for the last couple of weeks. Gilgeous-Alexander, still their best player, 26.5 points, 1.3 rebounds, 6.3 assists, 1 steal, 0.3 blocks on a turnover, 46.2 from the field, 33.3 from deep, and 96.6 from the free throw line. So we can see already not having the same impact internally on the glass, certainly not the same defensively and efficiency-wise. That has seen his scoring drop as well. Overall, Oklahoma City just not quite finding their way. The defense has slipped a little bit. I think there's been a couple of moments where teams have exposed them, but they are the defending champs. They did win 68 games last year, and there isn't a reason they still can't win 60 games this year. I mean, at this point, they're looking at 60-14. That's still pretty good. I would still think 65 games is a chance for them, but there are a couple of things they need to be careful of. So we'll see how that pans out. They're not as far ahead as they were previously, but I still think everyone's running second to them. The Phoenix Suns still remain another team that's probably poised to make a bit of a run if they can time it well. They do sit a couple of games below Minnesota. I mean, you're looking at this here. I mean, that's a 6 game above 500 compared to 10 games above 500. So, still a little bit of a gap there, but they are more of a perimeter-based team. They don't quite have the same big presence. again, it does show sometimes size is a factor in the game of basketball, but they have still been competitive. A 2-2 weekly record, as I said, 21-15 overall, 7th in the conference, and this man Devin Booker continuing to stake his claim towards an All-NBA first-team selection this year, at least in my opinion. 29 points, 2.5 rebounds, 5.3 assists, 0.3 steals, 0.3 blocks on 2.8 turnovers, shot 51.9 from the field, 31.6 from deep, and 88.2 from the free throw line. The key here that you've been able to see out of Phoenix is guys stepping up, guys stepping out, and just overall people making contributions that they weren't expecting. There has been some conversations apparently around Dylan Brooks, and there's some rumours floating around about Dylan Brooks and potentially moving him on. If I'm Phoenix, I'm not wanting to do that. He has been a crucial element to this team. He's been a huge culture piece to this team. He's really stepped up on both ends of the floor and really aided in the likes of someone like a Colin Gillespie having a breakout season. So if you're Phoenix, you don't want to lose a piece like that, but at the same time, there has to be a risk reward to exactly what you're going to get out of this season. The Portland Trailblazers, speaking of risk-reward, they have been a team that looked like they were going to close in on the play-in tournament, then they were a team that fell out of contention. But with a 3-1 weekly record this week, they're now only 3 games below 500. They're 9th in the conference. They're the team that has taken over Minnesota as far as putting up and shutting up. Memphis in putting up and shutting up. And they are going to start trying to challenge for the 8th seed. And why not when you have one of the all-star contenders out of the Western Conference and a guy who's continuing to build his case as one of the best international players in the league and certainly one of the most underrated players in the league in Deni Avdija. 4 games this week, 28.3 points, 8 rebounds, 9.3 assists, 0.8 steals and 0.8 blocks on 3.3 turnovers, 45.9 from the field, 44.4 from deep, 81% from the free throw line. He's doing this having limited assistance from someone like Drew Holiday this season, but someone like a Shaedon Sharp has also stepped up alongside of him as well. Portland are a really weird and mixed bunch. I've been saying this for a couple of years now, but someone like an Avdija has really stepped up and gone, hey, I can be a number 1 option on a team. He's certainly proving that in Portland. For me, as I said, he's having an impact credible enough to be an all-star. He's having an impact for me credible enough to be having a conversation around that All-NBA 2nd and 3rd team. People aren't going to like it, but if you're paying attention to the league, this guy is having a hell of an impact. The Sacramento Kings didn't win a game this week. They went 0-4 and they are 8-28. They're 14th overall and they are going nowhere fast. DeRozan, their best player this week, 14.3 points, 4.5 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1.3 steals and 0.3 blocks and 1.8 turnovers, 44.2 from the field, 12.5 from deep, 75% from the free throw line. Again, this is a team that is going nowhere fast. Notably, Sabonis hasn't played a lot of games this year, and to me, he's been the key cog for the better part of the last 4 years. They don't have him, they're not having a successful run, and they've got a bunch of guys who are very offensively inclined, who aren't putting points on the board, and don't play defense, and make a point of not doing so either. The Spurs, a 2-1 weekly record for them, 25-10 overall. They still sit 10th in the conference, and keeping in mind that we'd be talking about Oklahoma City being 33-4 if they had not played the San Antonio Spurs. That's the kind of impact they've had. They realistically could be 22-13 had those games gone the other way, and we wouldn't be necessarily having that conversation around the Oklahoma City Thunder. But De'Aaron Fox has been really, really nice. He's stepped up and stepped into this team again. An all-star season for me from De'Aaron Fox. This week, 23 points, 4.7 rebounds, 5 assists, 2.3 steals on 1 turnover, 51.9 from the field, 23.8 from deep, 72.7 from the free throw line. The Spurs still have plenty to offer. They're a young team. I wouldn't be surprised whether they have peaked early, but they've got depth. They can play both sides of the ball. They've got plenty of guys that can get about it. You know, there's still conversations around whether they are a piece short. Maybe they are, but the guy who is their number 1 is in his 3rd season. Should already be a defensive player of the year, should, have been in the MVP conversation last year, certainly was right up there until he became unavailable, and again, has been in the conversation until he's been injured this year. But the Spurs, plenty going on there. Castle and Fox proving one of the best guard combinations in the league on both sides of the ball, and the results are showing why. Finally, the Utah Jazz. And the Utah Jazz keep ebbing and flowing. They are doing a genuine Chicago Bulls effort of a couple of seasons ago before they decided to get rid of everybody. In the fact that they're having a really great week one week and the guys on the team look absolutely phenomenal. And then you come down the next week and they're not winning games and you're struggling to find someone who's having a genuine connection. A 0-4 week, they're now 12-23. So down to 13th in the conference and not looking like they're going to get any more consistency out of their team. Isaiah Collier had a really nice week though in the 4 games that he played. 10.3 points, 5 rebounds, 8.3 assists, a steal and 0.8 blocks on 2 turnovers, 61.5 from the field, 33.3 from deep and 53.8 from the free throw line. The one thing I will give the Jazz credit for is they have continued to try and find these guys that are able to have contributions to the team, that are able to sort of be uncovered and make a bit of noise. It's just the consistency that you're going to get out of these guys. At the moment, it's not there. Again, Keontae George, Lauri Markkanen, clearly a good 1-2 punch that are capable of getting up and down the floor that can impact games. But when they're not on, they're trying to find someone else to contribute, and they're not contributing to the same volume. For me, the Jazz, they're one bad week away from basically calling the season. On the other side, though, they're a team that can play 2 really good weeks in a row, and then they're back in playing contention. So we'll see how it unfolds, but you would think we have a definite answer on the Utah Jazz by the All-Star break. Anyway, guys, that has been my review for Week 11 of the 25-26 NBA season. As you can see, injuries impacting who is performing for teams, certainly the form of some teams. Meanwhile, there are a lot of teams that are down in the gutter, no chance of coming out of it, and really don't have any assets to try and work with. On top of that, some of the trade rumours that are getting, hot and spicy this time of year always make for good conversation. Are they realistic? Are they favouring teams that really need a trade? Who knows? The NBA media simply say, who cares? But yeah, I'm interested to see how players like a Trae Young and a Giannis Antetokounmpo fall out and where they fall in. I'm also interested to see, when you hear rumours of someone like a Kawhi Leonard, what that means not only to the team he's going to and what role he's going to play, but certainly the Clippers, who don't have much going forward for them. Anyway, guys, that's been me. That's been my review for Week 11 of the 25-26 NBA season. I'm out.